It's time now for the Casey Ingram Show on WSTU. The opinions expressed are those of the program host and guest and not necessarily those of WSTU. WSTU does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU. And now, here's Casey Ingram.
Good morning and welcome back to the show. This morning I'm going to have Gary Maxwell with the Stuart Heritage Museum here. He's in my studio here, and we are recording this show that's airing right now on Facebook, but it'll be airing on WSTU AM 1450 October 25th at 10 a.m. I also want to shout out Indiantown Marina is one of South Florida's best boat storage facilities. Located inland on the Okeechobee Waterway, Indiantown Marina is a well-protected hurricane hull. Indiantown Marina is home to many in the cruising community who find the facility ideally situated and user-friendly. Indiantown Marina is also a do-it-yourself and full-service boat yard offering the best of both worlds when it comes to servicing your vessel. Electrical, mechanical, prop and shaft work, bottom painting, complete boat painting, and pretty much anything you need. For information, call 772-597-2457, 772-597-2457, or visit them online at indiantownmarina.com. Also want to shout out, we're here at the Martin County Fair. We have a lot of things that are happening here, and we're getting ready for fair, February 9th through 17th. And I have a shout out to a couple of our sponsors that have come in. Eberst, Grand Champion sponsor, thank you so much. Eberst Law Firm and H.E. Hill Foundation. Again, thank you so much for your donations. We're having them come in, and I want to shout out to those major sponsors. So Gary, you know about sponsors and donations. You're a nonprofit 501c3 as well.
That's correct. We survive on donations, our limited membership dues, and some revenue from our gift shops. We've been blessed over the years to have been able to collect some decent donations, and we're able to keep the doors open.
Folks, it's absolutely friendly. And Jenny Lynn, I see you tuning in. Howdy to you as well. Folks, the Stuart Heritage Museum is downtown Stuart. Your address is on Flagler, but I don't know.
It's on Flagler, 161 Flagler.
It's decorated as the old feed store.
The old feed store.
And folks, it's a treasure. It is one of the biggest treasures on the Treasure Coast. I reached out to Gary as hoping he'd come on the show because they're also helping the fair out with a lot of our treasures. The fair will be celebrating its 65th year. And my goodness, you have treasures not only of the fair, but just so many things of Martin County and Stuart in that building.
You know, the purpose behind the museum is to collect, archive, display, pieces of history, pieces from local history. Everything in the museum has been donated through local people. Most of it has a local connection. It was in someone's home here. It was somebody's personal treasure. And they've honored us by allowing us to have it and use our discretion on displaying what we can.
So if you have some artifacts here in the area and you're not sure what to do with it, a good place to take it is to your museum because you'll take care of it.
Talk to us. We try to accept everything. We can't,
right,
but we try to.
Right.
And for anything that has a local connection is always of paramount importance to us. The building itself dates back to 1901, and that's probably our greatest treasure. It was started out as a general store from George W. Parks. He built that in 1901, largely out of Dade County pine. And in 1901, we weren't Stuart yet. We were Pottstown still. Potsdam.
Potsdam, right.
Right. And then in 1902, he expanded it. His brother came in and joined with him. And they expanded the building again. And they operated it as Parks Brothers at that point. And along the way, another gentleman partnered with them, Charles C.E. Riley.
Okay.
partnered with him. And it became the Stuart Mercantile. And that operated, became the Stuart Mercantile, and then it became the Stuart Feed Store.
Okay.
And it was in operation up until 1988, I believe. And it sat dormant for a few years, and the city had the good sense to step up and purchase the property. They partnered with the historic, Division of History and Resources, and got some grant money, and they installed fire sprinklers. They put a new roof on it. They stabilized the foundation, and eventually made it available to the for a museum.
So Gary, I'm fascinated. That building where it sits today is where it started. This is not a building that was moved?
It was moved one time.
Was moved once, okay.
Early 1900s, they moved it back from the road about 40 feet so they could expand the road in front of it. Now that road at the time ran through to the ferry crossing for the St. Lucie River.
Okay.
We had no bridge there, but we had a ferry crossing. That's where they backed the building up and, widened the road.
And if you think about how times have changed, so Stuart was founded in 1914.
Right.
This started, you said, in 1901. So you just think about all the changes. It was a feed store, and where we are today, thank goodness it's a museum. It's very much a treasure.
Even today, we have folks come in the building and remember back that they came in there and bought little chicks or ducklings.
Right.
There in the store. Oh yeah, I remember coming in. We bought,
That's what we used to do in this
animal feed. And,
right. And all the way up until 1988. So it's much of a treasure. I know on your website it said the first couple of years, Mrs. Peters' Smokehouse rented the front part of that just to help pay for expenses.
Yeah.
And it's kind of neat. That's another treasure here that's in the area. So very fascinating. Tell us about some of the exhibits that people find inside.
When you come into the museum, first as I said, the building itself is an exhibit. But as you come in, we've got a section which talks about the Seminole Indians, and a lot of folks don't know, but up until the 1940s, we had a small Indian settlement over on the, it would be Poppleton Creek. It's right behind where Poppleton condominiums are now.
I'll be darned, I did not know that myself.
In fact, there's a road there named Indian Creek Drive, I think it is.
Okay.
Which is the closest to where the little Seminole settlement was. We've got a vast collection of photographs and memorabilia. We've got photographs of some of the old pioneer homes, many of which are still here standing today. We've got a pictorial history of the Roosevelt Bridge, from the ferry crossings to the original bridge to the newer bridge to the upgraded bridge and on to what we have today.
But I bet that railroad bridge looks the same back then as it does today.
It does. It was.
I noticed it in some of your photos. It does. It looks the same.
Well, that's because it is the same.
It is. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. But those are fascinating photos, and I just think it's so much fun to talk about history here in the area. I know that one of your historic preservationists of the year, Sandra Thurlow, she's been on the show, and what a treasure all of your preservationists are that are bringing history not necessarily alive, but making sure it doesn't die. It keeps it relevant.
They're critical to remembering where we came from.
Right.
We've lost some of them along the way. Alice Lockhart,
was
bless her,
right.
she was a great asset to the museum, as is Sandy. We need to continue those traditions. Now, maybe don't go back as far as Alice and Sandy did, but there's a lot of folks here in town who grew up here. They've become doctors, lawyers, and Indian chiefs. and they're reaching retirement age. And we're hoping they'll step in and help us preserve the history that Stuart has. When I was speaking with city commissioner or someone a while back, they were commenting on how well we do at preserving history. And I said, yes, we do. But the hard part is picking out what they do today that will be historical 100 years from now.
That is tough.
And because we are living in what will be the history of the future. And so I lean on them to do great things so that we can preserve that information and pass it on.
And Gary, that's a really interesting statement you just made, because you think about the phones we used to have. Who would ever think that phones would not have cords anymore? At the time you think they're trash because we'll always have them. But it's somebody that can say this is a technology that'll change. And someday our computers that first started out, they were so big and bulky. Now in TVs.
Now they're in our hip pocket.
Yes, everything's in our hip pocket. TVs look like a picture on the wall instead of a great big old box that they used to be. So there's so many different things in our society that it's hard to focus on what needs to be
You
preserved.
mentioned telephones, and of course we've got a telephone display. But one of our members, who is a regular at the Old Timers on Wednesday, was actually a telephone operator in the old switchboard building, which I think is now Woodsman's Hall. And she's a great treasure of information. She's out of Port Salerno. It's Wendy, not Wendy. Oh well.
Wendy, we'll get your name another time.
Right.
Wendy.
And
It'll come to you tonight, by the
right,
way, at
I'll
2 a.m. in the morning.
2 a.m. I'm going to wake up with my eyes open.
That's what happens.
But it's those resources that we need to cultivate and keep. The little telephone display is cute. It shows, kids come in and say, what's this phone? Where are the buttons on it?
Right.
No buttons. You got to turn the dial.
What is that thing?
and then we tell them about party lines. And they go, what?
Yep, absolutely. Actually, I'm from Michigan originally, but my grandparents still had party lines in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
they're not that long ago, but you're absolutely right. Kids today have no idea what phones were party lines, and having to be attached to the wall while you're talking on the phone just seems outlandish. But again, we're speaking with Gary Maxwell. He's with the Stuart Heritage Museum, and just
as you go through the museum, there's a section which we refer to as the kitchen area, and it's got what were cutting edge appliances at the time in the early 1900s. An electric washing machine with a ringer on it. That doesn't ring like a phone. It's and a refrigerator, not an icebox, a refrigerator with the coolant equipment all on top of it. And I don't know, I haven't investigated, but I suspect it wasn't a Freon based in that time. It was probably an ammonia based coolant.
okay.
And sewing machines, irons, kitchen appliances, the grinders and the toasters of the day. And it's always interesting, when folks come in today and they see this, they say, oh yeah, my grandmother had.
Right.
I remember having that, and I remember Thanksgiving dinner or Thanksgiving, prepping for Thanksgiving and grinding cranberries for cranberry relish. And
They do. They bring back special memories and special times. And, I heard a statistic one time that I think is true, because I think about it in my own family. But, memories survive 3 generations. So being able to preserve these memories is something where future generations, that they don't know that person. It was 3 generations ago, but they can see the things, what life was like then, what tools were used.
And so much of, we have memories, but we don't think of them.
Right.
Until something trips that memory.
Right.
Whether it's an old yearbook or whether it's a household item. And then with that comes back not just that item, but everything around it. You know, who grandma was, who, you know, what was it, what was her house like? You know, you're looking at one, you know, grinder, and you're remembering everything about your grandmother, your great grandmother.
Right. Right. It does. It's fascinating. I walk into the museum in there, and it does trigger those kind of memories. And I'm there with my daughter, who has absolutely no idea of those memories. She has no idea of those things, and it's just I'm there to sit there and have the conversation with her. We used to use this, or this was grandma's, or this was great grandma's, and that's the kind of thing that the museum sparks, and it's very special. Do you have any type of ancestry department there? As we're talking, I'm thinking I bet you have a lot of calls for that.
We get some calls for it. We don't really have a ancestry department. We've got a lot of papers, a lot of photographs and information on addresses and names that can be researched, but we don't have an active display on it. You know, we have file cabinets upstairs with, you know, photographs by address.
That's incredible, and that's a treasure to anybody that does genealogy, because I think 100 years from now, it's probably going to be a lot easier to do genealogy on us because of everything that's out there. There's so much on record. Everything is recorded and taped and social media and computers. But you go back into the 1800s, and that wasn't the case. So that's a real treasure to find a photograph or a mention in a newspaper article.
When we go through photographs, and we've been working with the Martin County Digital Project, recording photographs. And what we're looking for on those is we hope to turn them over and find names on the back so we can identify who they are. Sometimes we can find people who, oh, that's so-and-so and that's so-and-so. But it's getting harder and harder to do that.
Oh, Gary, you just touched on something that is so frustrating, I think, in so many of our families, and I know it is in mine. When you take the picture, everybody knows who it is, so they never wrote on the back of the photo who it was.
Right.
And now they're gone, and when we're younger, we don't think to ask Grandma and Grandpa, who is this, who's that? We don't understand how much of a treasure that truly is to have that knowledge. They're gone, and now we have photos of people who have no idea who they are.
We look at old family photo albums, and if mom's gone, if grandma's gone, you know, we don't know if that some neighbor or is that Uncle John who immigrated from wherever.
That's right. It's a shame, but that has happened, and so and that's what's neat here, especially for the locals and locals, and I mean somebody that was born and raised here and has been here all along. You are the folks that are hopefully going to be able to help identify some of those people and bring back those memories.
Absolutely.
So, very cherished. Speaking of that as well, you talk about Old Timers Social. So that's every Wednesday, right?
Every Wednesday from 10 to noon. We have coffee and donuts out. We've got a good core of regulars, plus those who drift in and out from time to time that have been here all their lives. And we welcome them. We welcome those who have only been here a short time, like me. I've only been here close to 40 years, so I'm a newcomer. We welcome them all. It's always enjoyable to sit back and have someone bring up, well, what about so-and-so? And then a whole conversation goes on about hunting trips and about, you know, skiing off ski point and...
You talk about that, Gary, and one thing that struck me moving to this community is our beautiful water and fishing, and that is something I think that probably comes up a lot in conversations, is how much the St. Lucie River has changed, the bed of it, the color of it, and of the fish.
Yeah.
It's changed so much. There's not as many fish as there used to be.
No,
by far.
And I'd like to think we're making progress at reversing that trend. It hasn't manifested itself to my eyes yet.
Right.
But I'd like to think we're making progress to restore some of that.
Good morning, Susie. Good to have you tuning in. Thank you so much. Gary, I couldn't agree more. Our waters were so beautiful, and when they talked about a sandy bottom, it's hard to even fathom that now looking at our St. Lucie River
Really?
with all the muck. But
That's it. Where I've only been here 40 years, I'm a native Floridian. I grew up down in Fort Lauderdale. My folks were coming up here in the 50s and 60s. So I remember the old Jensen Beach Bridge before the causeways.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the Stuart causeways being put in. And we were up for weekends and vacations, and Dad was a fisherman, and he'd come back with an ice chest full of fish. When I got up here, I tried my hand at fishing. I wasn't nearly the fisherman he was, and I'd be lucky to come back with a couple catfish.
Yep.
Things have changed in the river. Partly my abilities, largely my abilities, but the rivers have changed.
The river has changed in the content, and there's just less fish. It's just unfortunate. The photos, and you'll have photos there in the museum, and that's what's so neat is you see all the fishermen and the big catches that they used to have, and they're up in the dock showing them.
They could make a living out of the river.
Yeah. Different times.
And speaking of livings, there's been different industries throughout Stuart and Martin County. We have a display in there that talks about the pineapples that were grown here in the early 1900s.
Flowers too, right?
Chrysanthemums. We were the largest producer of chrysanthemums in the world, as I understand, at one point. And we've got displays on that. And I remember coming up, and you'd get here at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and the whole western side of Stuart was lit up with lights over the chrysanthemum to push them to bloom all at the same time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah.
And there is a lot of history here and how the industries have changed, where now we're focusing more. We've got aerospace industry, and of course, I don't think one thing that'll ever change is our industry that's related to the water. Fishing, it was hardier fishing back then, but we're still very reliant.
But still, the water still is a great draw for residents as well as for tourists.
It is.
And
big marine industry.
We may moan and groan when the streets get clogged up with visitors.
Right.
But they're part of what makes the town work.
That's absolutely right. We appreciate their tourism and visitor dollars.
Absolutely.
Helps to make the world go round, as they say.
Absolutely.
You survive a lot on your donations, right? And how can people contribute and help with the museum?
My first request form would be to, come by and visit, see what we've got going on. We accept donations at the museum. We do have a PayPal account they can do donations to. They can go to our website and connect that way. They can put us in their will if they like.
That would be nice, yeah.
Every little bit helps.
It truly does, and again, you have to visit it. It's on Flagler Avenue. Just keep driving down and towards the Roosevelt Bridge, and you'll see it on the right-hand side. You can't miss the building whatsoever, and it's a beautiful location right on the water. But being on the water, their lease is going to be coming up in 2024, and Stuart passed a resolution that any property that city owned to lease it or sell it has to go through voter referendum. So now that your lease is coming up and expiring, you have to go through voter referendum next year.
The city's been very cooperative with us. Actually, our lease has already expired.
Okay.
They've allowed us to stay on a year-by-year basis.
And I think voters will be very supportive of it as well.
I'm hoping they will, because we are going to have a referendum in November, a year from now, in November, asking for the voters of Stuart to support the museum. Support it by allowing the city to provide a long-term lease on the building at a set dollar value, so that we can fulfill the what the original commission's plan was when they bought the building.
Right.
To have a historic museum in Stuart supporting the downtown business district.
And it is a perfect location for that. So if you go onto the website, the Stuart Heritage Museum, you'll see some information about the museum, but also there's a couple videos there that you absolutely, I would encourage you to watch. One is a 1964 video of Stuart. So that is about a 20-minute long video. So it's really in-depth, and it's a lot of fun to watch. It talks about the cars and airplanes, buildings, but it's really a snapshot of the time. and a lot of fun. And there's another one I see going around on Facebook, might have been a clip from that, but talking about confusion corners. We have such a history there, and that is special to Stuart.
Confusion Corner, for all its drawbacks, and I don't think you'll find anyone who says it was a good idea to put, 4 highways and a train track to come together at one place. But it's part of our character. And I hope everyone is careful going across it. Be wary of strangers that may go the wrong way on it. But it's a landmark we all know.
It is. And you have to endear yourself. Confusion Corners, you don't have to say, where is that? Everybody knows the minute you say Confusion Corners.
Right. Everything is related to how far it is away from Confusion Corners.
Absolutely. So they have a DVD of Martin County history. You can get this DVD for just a $5 donation. I think that's super important as well. And you have a movie of present day, Stuart, that you have on your website, which will soon be part of the history that we'll all be watching. So again, this has been a wonderful show. Stuart Heritage Museum, Gary Maxwell. This show will air on WSTU AM 1450 on Wednesday, October 25th at 10 a.m. Gary, it's been such a pleasure to have you here in the studio.
Casey, thank you for having us on and helping us get our name out there.
I will, and be watching the fair Facebook page, because every Thursday I'm posting pictures, and it's courtesy of the Stuart Heritage Museum that's sharing those special treasures of the fair with us, and then we can share them with you as well. Thank you very much, Gary. Stuart Heritage Museum. Appreciate you coming
Casey.
in. Appreciate all you do. Absolutely.